So exciting. All right, let's get into it. Hey, strong friends, welcome back to the Courtney for Life podcast. We're doing things a little bit differently today, and I'm super hyped for this conversation. So I am with the beautiful Kayla. And hello, so exciting. We're also doing this as a YouTube video as well. So if you're watching this, you can see our wonderful faces. We are talking about our experiences with bikini competitions because her and I have known each other for a while now. She's been a client of mine, and recently she transitioned into being a client of Atlas Bodybuilding, which is the same team I'm on. And I've known Kayla for a while. I believe that I helped her kind of like set her up in terms of like getting into this competition and approaching like this whole preparation series. And her and I, like, even though I did try to help set her up as much as possible, we did our preps, and like how I've done my 3 preps so far and how she did this one is like so incredibly different, like almost extremes. So I shared a lot about my competition prep, especially last year, which is honestly the reason why I shared all of those YouTube videos last year when I did like that prep series, honestly was for Kayla. She wanted to learn more about all of this. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to record and share everything about my experience. So she had like an understanding or what you could expect going into her prep, but honestly, it was like so friggin' different, like so incredibly different. And it was like, from an outsider perspective, it was really cool to see how she overcame like all of these challenges. Like she knew going into prep was going to be hard. I know we're going to talk all about this. I'm like prefacing so much. She knew prep was going to be hard, and it was a different kind of hard, and she still went through all of it. So it was like super, super exciting to watch her. And she shared a little bit on her Instagram about going through all of this prep experience, but there's so much that wasn't shared. So this is what we're doing. So this is why we're here. We do have like a little outline, a template. So hopefully we'll kind of stay on track, but if we veer off, it's all for good reasons. Hopefully you can benefit whether you're watching or listening to this. So we're going to get right into it. Kayla, just give us like a quick little intro about like who you are and what you do, and tell us something awesome.
Well, I have been working with you for the last like year and a half-ish. And so I'm a coach, fitness and nutrition coach. And I had decided to make this full-time decision to become a coach. And I am absolutely loving it. Like Court said, I have recently decided to do a competition. And honestly, it was phenomenal. I loved it all. It was a very hard experience, but it was great. Something awesome is, honestly, I'm just loving the warm weather in the summer. So I'm just enjoying it.
I love that for you. That's so exciting. Yay for summertime. Summer just makes everything
Right?
better. Okay, so let's go into our list of questions. So hopefully give you like a little bit of intro, and we'll just go with the flow. So what made you want to do a bikini competition originally? And what made you like actually pull the trigger and saying like, okay, now I'm going to do it?
Okay, so ever since I got really into fitness and nutrition, like fitness has always kind of been a part of my life. It was me growing up. I was always involved in sports. I would look at magazine covers. I remember doing like crunches and jumping jacks and like body weight squats and things like that in my mom and dad's bedroom, and just like random workouts like that. So like I've always really loved working out. I actually really used to love running as well. And then we kind of, once I got old enough, and I mean, you know, the drinking and all of that, you start to gain a little bit of weight. And I was like, okay, I need to do something about this because I'm feeling really uncomfortable in my body. So I had decided to join the gym. And then as that transitioned, I just really started to fall in love with the process. I hired my first coach, who was a local coach. And I remember telling her, like, I want to look like a bikini competitor, but I don't want to compete. And I'm sure now you can kind of laugh at that. And even I do too, because it's like, there's so much more to it than just wanting to look like a competitor. And honestly, you don't want to look like that all the time, especially when you know what goes into it.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Of course, when I first hired her, that's what I told her. And then I don't know, the whole lifestyle became a passion of mine, hence why I'm a coach now. And then I just, started deciding like, I want to do this. Like, I think I watched you compete the first time and I watched all your YouTube videos of that. And I just got really inspired by it. And it was constantly in my mind. And as I think once you and I had the discussion about, I don't know, 2-ish years ago now, when I had decided that, this might be something I want to do. And you had talked to me about joining Atlas. We kind of switched my training into more of like a bodybuilding type approach, more hypertrophy based. And what made me actually pull the trigger was like, I didn't want to get to a point in my life where I regretted not doing it. I didn't want to get to like, I don't know, my 80s and be like, man, I really wish I did that fitness competition. This is just such a passion for me, and I really love training. I love nutrition. I love the growth that I have experienced as a client of yours, and just the mental push of going through prep really had me grow in like a completely different way. It was challenging, but it was honestly so good for me. I loved it.
I love it. It's so funny. Like the more you get into it, the more you realize like, holy shit, things are different, but it's almost like motivation and be like, yo, if I can do that, like what else can I do? Like, it's so exciting. One thing I want to add in is like, so Kayla's a coach on my team with me. She's been a client of mine for a while. And then it was like about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago. Or a couple of years ago, she wanted to do the competition. So I had said like, okay, in a really nice way, I basically said, you're not ready for it yet, but I really want to help you like do some pre-prep work. So we actually went through like some protocols, and we kind of went through what she could probably expect in competition or in a prep. So we did kind of push her training a little bit. Obviously, training isn't going to be like the be all end all in terms of like body recomposition, but we did bias like glutes and shoulder training a little bit more. We put her into a caloric deficit because we need to lose body fat. I encouraged her, and she checked in every week with me and be like, okay, you're going to do morning walks. You're going to do daily stretching. You're going to, what did I say? Like you have to exfoliate in the shower like 2 or 3 times a week, because that's part of prep. Like they're all drinking a certain amount of water, like making sure your nutrition is meticulous, not just like hitting your macros with whatever. Like, so I kind of set her up as best as I predicted or thought her prep was going to be. So I really think like that helped, and it was really exciting to watch you do that. And I think that really had like a big impact on prep. Not that it made it easier by any means, but you could understand protocols and things that are happening, and you already had like that skill of adherence and discipline.
Absolutely. And like going through all of that with you was a really good prefacer, because even when you and I were going through that, like there were times where I was struggling and I was like, holy crap, like, I don't know, maybe like, I don't know what my prep's going to be like. Maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I do. It kind of just puts things into perspective. And then like, as we reversed out of that deficit, it started to become more and more prevalent to me that I was like, you know what, I want to do this. I'm going to do it.
I love it. It still makes me so excited, like just talking about all of this. Okay. So based on all of that, like what did you expect going into prep?
Okay. So when I was like preparing myself for the worst. I remember even having a conversation with Ty, my husband, being like, it's going to be fucking hard. And like, there's going to be times where I'm not going to have energy, and I'm going to need you to help me. I'm going to need you to maybe pick up some slack around the house, things like that. So I remember just having that conversation with him and making sure that, he was okay with me doing this as well, because it does take a toll on a relationship as well. So we did have a lot of honest conversations about it before I actually fully decided to commit to it. But I was like, my calories are going to have to get really low, and I'm probably going to be doing a lot of cardio. So I was like kind of preparing myself for high amounts of cardio. I don't think I really realized how high of cardio it was going to get to, or how low the calories were going to get to in the end. But it was like, I was totally preparing myself for a grind.
Yeah. And you can only like prepare so much. Like I know my preps over like this next year, they're all going to be different. So like I have an idea of what to expect, but like you have no idea until you like actually get into it and seeing how your body responds. Like you can predict, yes, I know it's going to be hard and I choose this hard or whatever, but it's like you don't know what kind of hard you're going to get with everything going on in your life. And one thing I do want to express is the importance of like having spouse support or like relationship support or friend support throughout all of this, because like that impacts them. And whether like they're directly affected or not, like if you guys are living in the same house, like there's tension, there's stress, there's like, no, I can't go out for date night, or like, honestly, I don't want to have sex right now because I have to do cardio, or I'm fucking tired, like I have no energy, or I need to eat. Like honestly, relationships, like I don't care who you are, your relationship, if you're in prep, like it takes a backseat. Absolutely. Like 100%. Every single competitive athlete can admit that. And it sucks, but it's the truth. Okay, so what were your macros and training protocols like before you were starting?
So before starting, I was with you. So we had discussed like doing the mini prep type style, and we were kind of prepared for keeping macros within 3 grams of my macros, keeping fiber intake consistent, ensuring proper rest and recovery steps, all of that. We were increasing my steps each week based on how my body was responding to the protocols. So we were reversing and increasing calories up after that deficit. The deficit was actually like, it worked out really well because we did all of this right before my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in that big deficit, and then we started reversing calories back up, and my body was responding really, really well to the reverse. So I was in a good spot with metabolism, with macros, with calories. And then when I started with Humberto and Atlas, like we honestly kept my macros or my calories basically the same, adding in a few high days here and there. We did a couple small increases at the start before we really got into things later on throughout the prep.
Do you remember like exactly what your macros were, or like the range or the calories around that time?
Calories, I think, were around 2,000 to 2,200.
That's not too bad with starting.
No.
It's
No.
a good start. And then now you probably realize they're like, yeah, I probably want to get up to like 3,000 before I actually do this again. And you're training, like when we were training together, we were doing 4 days a week. Did that increase to 5 days a week?
It actually increased to 6 days a week.
Okay. Well, I think we'll get to that. I think that's one of the questions. Yeah. How did your training change? Let's actually ask that now. So how did your training days change? And then what areas in your training did you actually focus on?
So we definitely focused a lot on glute and shoulder emphasis, particular, like honestly, all heads and my shoulders. Basically, glute med was a big one that we focused on. And then, which is like your upper glute, and just glutes in general, a lot of hip thrusting, like a shit ton of hip thrusting. I'm still hip thrusting a shit ton. But you know, like it's a different type, because when you're focusing on strength, or you're maybe just a lifestyle client and you're focusing on getting stronger, it's very different from prep in to a point. Like you are way more focused on the mind muscle connection. Yeah, sure, I could hip thrust more if I was focusing on strength, but I'm using a lot more momentum and like things like that. Whereas when you're in prep, yeah, I decreased my weight up quite a bit, and I did the Smith machine because I found a way better mind muscle connection with it. And my training increased to 6 days a week, which was a lot. Only having one rest day was a lot on my nervous system. And like the physical stress was high as well, because you're doing a lot of cardio.
Yeah.
On top of all of that. So training, like to an extent, like it changed a lot, but like the style of programming and everything, it didn't change that much from when you and I were working together, just because we were still working on a lot of like glute and shoulder training. And it's kind of funny because when you go through all of that, and after even going through a show, it's like, wow, I don't have near enough muscle.
I know, you think you're jacked, and then all of a sudden you do a show and you're like, shit, I am so small.
Right? Exactly. And I was like,
I need to grow. I need more muscle. Mind muscle connection is so important, like for all clients. And like, we really push that like with our lifestyle clients, but it's a different kind of emphasis when you compete. And I honestly don't even know how to explain it until you get into it. And you're like, oh, that feeling, like you can't even describe it, but I don't know. I think it's so cool. I'm so into like all the like weird sciencey stuff about it.
Me too.
So how did you feel adjusting from flexible dieting and then going into a meal plan? What was that like?
I knew it was going to be a challenge to do because I do enjoy the flexibility of just foods and just being able to enjoy like different types of foods that make me feel good. And going into the meal plan, it was like a little bit nerve-wracking at the start because I was like, okay, I'm going to be literally eating these exact same foods the whole entire time. And at the start, it wasn't bad because I had some variety. I think I had like egg whites, eggs, sweet potatoes, ground beef, chicken, rice, broccoli, rice cakes on some days. Like I just had a little bit more of a variety. And then when we really got down into the deficit, it was like egg whites,
Yeah.
chicken, rice.
And then egg whites gets cut and then protein powder gets cut. And it's so like basic. Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
like, okay.
And when you did this prep, Humberto gave you a meal plan, right?
Yeah.
With all of that. That's what I had. Like, so this is technically like my 4th year with Humberto, third year. My 4th competition that I'm doing. We eventually got to the point because I have so much experience with like nutrition and training. He kind of gives me like a template and then he technically gives me macros, which isn't something that a lot of competitors get. I think it requires a lot of like skill and understanding. But like, again, I don't even know how, like almost 10 years or 8 years of nutrition coaching. And like, I know how to do this. So even when I wasn't in prep, like 6 months ago, I was literally eating the same thing that I did in prep. So, like you can be flexible in prep, but there is specificity. And if you look into my macros food log, I'm literally eating the same thing every single day already. So that when I do get into like the depths of prep and like things have to get harder, like I've already done like this pre-work, like I pre-planned all of this stuff to make prep easier per se. But I don't know, sometimes I think following a meal plan, especially like if you're busy and even if you're tired and exhausted, like yes, it would be nice to like have flexibility and be like, oh, I want to change this today, but it's like it's one less thing to think about. You go to the grocery store and you're like, I know what I have to buy and I don't have to think about anything. Like my opinion, I find a meal plan so much easier, but it's how it balances in your lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And like there, especially when you're in prep, like the meal plan was so nice because you have like, there's work, there's physical stress. You're just so busy that honestly, just having those foods made all the time is the easiest thing on your mind, honestly. Just being able to go into the fridge, grab your meal and be done with it. And then I also found just like, once you get more into the deficit, like you honestly, everyone's asking like, oh, what are you craving? What do you want? And I'm like, I honestly, yeah, I saw foods around the house and everything that like Ty was having or something. And it's like, yeah, that would be good. But I just want more rice and chicken or more oats. Like, I just want more of the foods that I'm eating. Like I would do anything for more rice or more oats.
Right. And I'm presuming Humberto did the same thing with you. Like he doesn't just give like this cookie cutter template in terms of like the foods that you are going to eat. Like he takes the foods that you're currently eating and makes the plan based off of that. And then you adjust, which is always great. And that's what makes it like a lot more sustainable rather than saying like, oh, you're a competitor A, you're a competitor B, you're all going to get the same foods. It doesn't necessarily work that way. So I feel like in an approach like that, in a much more customized approach, you're probably going to get cravings and tendencies. Like we are human. That is part of our like physiology, but it almost like suppresses them or it doesn't make them like as extreme, which is always a good thing. You had mentioned stress. So what tools did you use to manage stress during your prep?
Okay, this one was a tough one because stress is like always going to be like in our lives. So managing it was huge. So setting myself specific boundaries within my personal life, especially. I have a big tendency to be a bit of a people pleaser. I want to say yes to everything. I want to be everywhere at the same time. I want to help everyone. And it can get to be a lot at times. And like, say a friend or someone texted you and they're going through a rough time and they want to talk. it's like you get to a point where you don't have the energy to do that, or to take on that kind of responsibility, or to take on their stress. It gets to be very challenging. So setting like those boundaries and just having honest conversations with friends, with family, with Ty, with everyone was huge, because it's not just the mental stress, but it's the physical stress that you're in as well. So making sure I'm like recovering well. I got to a point where I was like, I always like to set my alarm. And I got to a point in prep where I'm like, I'm not setting an alarm anymore. I need to sleep.
Yeah.
So I just quit setting an alarm and I let my body sleep in as much as it could, which still wasn't very much, because I mean, you're hungry, you're waking up through the night because you're hungry, and like just not having that I don't know, alarm or something to wake up to in the morning was nice, because I could just enjoy sleeping in as much as I possibly could without hearing an alarm go off.
That's
And
so
then self-care.
important, like setting boundaries, but like being aware of like what boundaries like need to bend. Like not setting alarm was a boundary, right? And that's so powerful. Like at least you're waking up, even if you are waking up hungry, it's more natural, and you're not waking up. I don't care what music you're listening to when you wake up, like it's still like a disruption, you know what I mean? So one thing that I do with my sleep, like I set an alarm right now. I don't need to, but I like the consistency. I have like my little routine in the morning, but I set myself, it's like a wake up window. So it's not like I wake up at 5:30 every morning. It's somewhere where my body's like naturally like almost awake, somewhere between like 5:15 and 5:30. So I have like that little bit of like buffer, and it's just a little bit more natural. But I love that for me. So speaking of like fatigue and being tired, do you think that was like one of your biggest struggles during prep?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The fatigue is like a different level. You don't understand the level of exhaustion or fatigue or low energy until you're in prep and you're really into the depths of it. Like you can think, yes, it's going to be exhausting. Yes, you're going to be tired. But there's times where like, honestly, if I went on a walk with Ty, I'd have to constantly tell him, you need to slow down. I cannot keep up to you.
Like you can't even walk.
Yeah. Like,
oh my God.
It was so hard.
And almost like, it's not a funny thing, but the funny thing is like in the bikini criteria is you need to be soft. Like, and I say that in such a good way, like you don't need to be like cut hard and dry. And I know that like when we do get leaner, other athletes get leaner, figure competitors, fitness competitors, bodybuilders, like the big guys, the sex drive goes down. But like, even they've said like sleeping hurts. I've heard people say that sleep actually hurts because you have such low body fat that like, it's just, it's bone, right? And like, yes, there's muscle, but it's just uncomfortable. And like, just sitting hurts. And like, it's such an extreme sport, and it can be very unhealthy. It can be healthy, like depending on the approaches, but like even the things that we're talking about, like this isn't the most extreme aspect of the whole bodybuilding industry, which is absolutely crazy, but it's super cool. One thing I didn't ask, and I don't actually have this as like a question, was what was the lowest that your calories were and the highest that your cardio was? Everyone wants to know.
The lowest my calories got to was within the last few weeks. We cut them down to 700.
Holy fuck.
And cardio was at 2 hours.
And that was like, that wasn't, what kind of cardio was that? Fasted cardio? Was it like incline treadmill walk?
It was running. Like ideally, Humberto wanted me to be using the Stairmaster, but the Stairmaster at our gym, we have 2 of them. Neither of them are working. So I was doing running on the treadmill, like hit sprinting whenever I could, like pushing through as much as I could, like a fast-paced walk, like as little rests in between, and then jogging and then sprinting. So I was doing a lot of that. And then at one point he's like, let's switch to the elliptical for a little bit. So I switched to the elliptical for a while just to do something different. I was having some pain in my hip and my glute med. So we decided to switch to the elliptical, which started to feel a bit better. And then I was going to like athletic therapy for my hip, my glute med that was tight. And once that started getting better, then I got back on the treadmill, because I was like, I don't feel like I'm getting the same results from the elliptical. So I switched back to the treadmill.
I didn't even know about that about your hip, which is insane. And the thing is, like, right now I'm probably clocking about like 2 hours of cardio. And I'm 8.5 weeks out, but it's walking and it's relative to my lifestyle. So I won't get into all of that, but like your cardio isn't easy cardio. Like, it's not like, oh, just go walk on the treadmill and burn like 300 calories. It's like, you need to fucking go bust your ass on 700 calories, people.
Yes.
Insane.
And I was still getting steps on top of that. So I was still going for
Right.
my walk, ensuring I was hitting a certain step amount. And yeah, it was a lot.
These are things that like you can't predict. Like, nobody knew that was going to happen, right?
No, I had no idea. No idea.
How did your personal relationship, how was that affected during prep?
It was really hard. At the beginning, it wasn't bad because my calories were high. I had more of a flexible approach where Humberto gave me macros. I stuck to the same foods the whole time just because that's what I liked. And I wanted to put myself in the best position for it. So honestly, at the beginning of prep, it wasn't as bad, but as we got further into it, my relationship was definitely affected. And it's challenging because like, they don't want to tell you that they're struggling in the relationship because they know you're under so much stress and they love you and they care about you. And they want to see you do your absolute best throughout this. But I had no sex drive, and that is very challenging for a spouse because especially if that's how your spouse feels loved or by physical touch or anything like that. And I had very little to no sex drive towards the end of it, like nothing. So for me, I wasn't even spending quality time with Ty. It was a lot of work and prep. And Ty was.
I have to go do cardio. Come do cardio with me. And that's going to be our time together. Or let's hang out and watch a movie, but I'm going to fall asleep because I'm fucking exhausted.
Exactly. Or like, let's go to the gym together. That you can spot me and that'll be our time together. Like things like that. It's just like, it was challenging for him for sure. Because I mean, it is a little bit more of like a selfish sport. Like as much, I don't really like saying that, but it is. You really have to, if you're doing a competition, you're all in. And like for me, it was prep, work, and then like that was basically my life. And that was fine. Like I did enjoy it. I loved it. But at some aspect, like if I were to do another prep, I do want to try and like improve my stress management for one, but I also want to like improve my ability to show up for Ty when I can, even if like you and I had this conversation, but if it's like holding his hand while we're watching a movie, like just things like that to show him how much I care and that I love him and that I'm thinking of him, like things like that, would be, I think would mean a lot to him.
Yeah. I feel like Kristen is totally like so similar. So you and I had like really good conversations about like relationships, and like I am by no means a relationship expert like at all, but I have just learned like, and Kristen had mentioned it to me. He's like, he even said when I wasn't competing, he's like, your work comes first. And I know that. So then when you add prep into the mix, like prep comes at the top and then the work and then the relationship. So having like that balance or like the ability to fit those pieces like into your life puzzle, you know what I mean? I want to kind of like jump forward a little bit. We're actually going to like run out of time on Zoom. So I want to make sure that we get through like some of the good things. But what was your Showday experience like? And like, how did you feel about all of it?
I loved it, but I was a nervous fucking wreck on the day. Honestly, I went to Humberto and I was like, I'm freaking out. Like, I'm just freaking out. I'm going to cry. And he calmed me down and we figured it out. I was messaging Kat, like between the two of them, they really got me in a better headspace. I got into like a more zen place with my mindset and everything, calmed down. But like things like that absolutely take a huge toll on your whole body composition throughout the show. Like you don't realize it, but when you are manipulating the body so much, stress, all of it impacts your body, even when you're not in prep. Like, but then you add prep into it, it's a whole different level. Your body composition changes so much just from that. So I felt Showday experience was awesome. I couldn't have done it without Humberto and Kat, and I got to meet them. So that was really cool.
I
Like,
love that. I love that you had them at your first show, which is amazing. Like I still haven't met Kat and I've been working with her for like 3 years. I actually get to meet them. They're going to be here for the first competition I do this year. Like when I first did my competition, I had messaged Humberto and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have like my friend come with me and she's going to be backstage. He's like, do you need a fucking babysitter? Like, how old are you? And like, that's just the relationship we have. But like, I didn't have anyone and I'm in a different country and not everyone speaks English. I'm like, somebody like translate this shit for me. And like, that's show day stress. Like any show is fucking disorganized. I've never seen an organized show. I've heard of them. I've heard of the rumors, but I've never experienced one. I don't know if I'll ever experience one in Mexico. But having them with you, I think that's so great. And I need to like shout out your front pose because I know that like you were really proud of it and Humberto and Kat were both really proud of it. But like even I had said, I'm like, what the fuck? Like your front pose, like you do not look like an amateur at all. You look like a fucking pro with that front pose. I loved it. Loved it.
Thank you. That was like one of the best compliments I could have received. I
Uh,
think you mentioned it and like Kat and Humberto mentioned it too. And I was just like, oh my God, this means the world to me.
yeah, like when you sent me like a check-in photo before and I'm like, what? Hello? Goals? Like it was so, and I think things like that, like those are totally ego strokes. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's like motivation to want to like
Absolutely,
keep going.
yeah.
And then like, especially with posing, it's so important. It can be so friggin' frustrating, like so frustrating, but like just hearing those little things and you're like, oh, okay, like I can do this. I can do this. And it just like gives you that momentum to keep going.
Absolutely.
Looking back, what do you think you could have done differently or better? And kind of like, other than, I know that you had mentioned that you want to like kind of find a better balance, especially with your relationship and prep. But what specifically do you think, or what is something maybe that the listeners or viewers can predict or try to like nip in the bud?
Honestly, managing my stress and setting boundaries. Like I said, I did that, but I only did it to a specific extent. I could have been way more on top of it. And like just being more honest with those around me about what I needed rather than just trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like that took a big toll on me. That took a big toll on like my whole prep experience too. Like it made it that much more stressful just by trying to be like everywhere in different areas. And I mean, there are some things that like life is just going to throw at you and you don't have any choice at the matter. Like going throughout prep, I lost my auntie. My grandfather was in the hospital for like a few months, I think. Like it was challenging. It was really hard to go through all of that and still have to be like, I don't have all the time that I want to spend with them, or like I'm not going to be able to go to this celebration of life because I don't want to put myself in this situation where there's all this food around. Like I still went to the funeral and everything like that, but there was another gathering later, and it's like you have to make those choices. And although I think I would have been fine with it, you have to do what's best for you. And it's hard, but knowing yourself and just knowing what you need at that time and what's going to drain your energy is so important. Yeah. Because you're like when you're in prep, your energy is very limited. So.
Yeah, there's so many sacrifices, like so many. You don't really know until you get there. And then of course, looking back, hindsight is always 2020 and you're like, oh, I can do this differently next time, but you don't know what collection of life things are going to happen next time, right?
No.
We're like 2 minutes away from our time limit. So do you have any advice for anyone who's interested in competing? Maybe someone that's like coming from a lifestyle client perspective.
Ooh. Okay, first of all, it's not a lifestyle. So that's a big thing. You know that. It's going to be harder than you expect. So understand that. Understand that like you really can't predict what's going to happen. You have no idea. You do specific things that get you to where you are on the stage, and just I mean, if you're really looking into prep, really do a lot of the inner work beforehand as well.
Yeah. I've said this like recently, specific protocol or specific goals require specific protocols. Like there are some extremes, and like there's a lot of things in my prep that I don't share about because I don't want people to think it's like, ooh, fancy and flashy, and ooh, you're wearing a waist trainer, I want to do that. Oh, you're doing that exercise. And like there are specific requirements and a lot of the sacrifices that a lot of people aren't willing to do. So I totally love that share. Thank you everyone for listening and for watching. I hope this was like super beneficial and enjoyable. You can follow Kayla on Instagram. It's kaylamaus.fitness. She's also at CFL Coaching. She posts so much good shit. A little shout out to Humberto and Kat from Atlas Bodybuilding. They are amazing humans and we totally love them and we're going to keep working with them. And that's it, strong friends. Thank you again for listening and for watching, and we'll chat later. Bye.
Bye.